US President Donald Trump is back on the scene, and this time Europe and Canada are really angry.
If they don't make their product in America, then very simply they should have to pay a tariff.
Tariffs, calls for boycotts and trade wars. Is the United States creating a serious rival for itself instead of neighbourhood? Let's take a closer look at all the developments as relations between the two sides are strained. Donald Trump is considering new tariffs on cars and many other products from Europe.
It will definitely happen with the European Union, I can tell you that. They don't take our cars, they don't take our farm products, they take almost nothing.
But how has Europe reacted?
So what does that mean for Europe? Are we heading for a global trade war again?
The European Union says it does not want an unnecessary tariff war, but how much does Trump care? Since his inauguration last month, Trump has revived trade war rhetoric, pointing to high tariffs on European goods. Meanwhile, he has yet to clarify how he plans to end the war in Ukraine, a key campaign promise, within 6 months.
When I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together, that war would have never happened.
European leaders see both issues as important tests for the transatlantic union. Denmark in particular opposed Trump's suggestion that the United States could take control of Greenland for security reasons. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen insisted that Greenland was not for sale and warned of a tough response if Washington pursued its claims.
Greenland is today a part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It's a part of our territory, and it's not for sale.
Trump's tariff threats echo previous trade wars with Europe. During his first term, the president imposed tariffs on European steel and aluminum, prompting retaliation from the European Union. Leaders have since been in talks with Canada, which recently imposed tariffs on United States goods in response to a 25% tariff. So, what is being said on the issue? French President Emmanuel Macron said that the European Union is a force standing on its own territory. Macron added that if the United States imposes tariffs, Europe must respect itself. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen emphasised that her government has broad European Union support in rejecting United States claims over Greenland. Everyone must respect the sovereignty of all national states in the world, and Greenland today is part of the Kingdom of Denmark, Frederiksen said. NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte acknowledged United States concerns, but emphasised the alliance's commitment to the security of the Arctic. Rutte said that it is absolutely clear that Trump is right, and when it comes to the Arctic, collectively, we must do more. Now about the boycott. United States companies have faced a boycott over Trump tariffs. Consumers in Europe said that if the United States is going to treat us like this, we will not buy their products. If brands like McDonald's, Apple, Nike are boycotted, things could get messy. Do you think Europe would really do that? Let's take a closer look at the situation. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canada have sparked outrage in a country where there are growing calls for people to boycott American products.
With 25% US tariffs now confirmed for Canadian products, there are no talks of boycotting US products.
Trump's announcement that Canadian products would face a 25% tariff was followed by retaliatory measures announced by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and a call for citizens to buy Canadian goods instead of American ones. Ontario's Premier, Doug Ford, said his province was banning American companies from provincial contracts until the tariffs are lifted, and joined another Premier in reducing sales of American liquor. There have also been calls on social media for Canadians to rethink their investments in United States companies and their patronage of American firms, including McDonald's, Walmart, and Microsoft.
McDonald's, but I never did. I'm running against somebody that said she did, but it turned out to be a totally phony story. So if you don't mind, I want to work the French fry counter.
Gary Sands, Vice President of the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers, said Trump's move has led to unprecedented demand from consumers who want to know if products are made in Canada. Gary Sands did not expect retailers to boycott American products, but said the movement among consumers to avoid United States-made products could grow. They want very visible signs that it's Canadian when they walk into the store, Sands said. So why does this matter? The Canadian Chamber of Commerce said Trump's tariffs could significantly damage the Canadian economy and shrink its gross domestic product by 2.6%. While Canadians switching to local goods may not immediately hurt the much larger United States economy, the trade dispute could affect other critical areas of integration between the countries, such as energy and security. First of all, the following should be known. Prime Minister Trudeau responded to Trump's move by announcing a 25% tariff on $30 billion worth of United States goods coming into Canada.
Good evening. Today, the United States informed us they will be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy,
which will be applied to $125 billion of American imports later this month.
Today, the United States informed us they will be imposing 25% tariffs on Canadian exports to the United States and 10% on Canadian energy.
The Prime Minister said Canadians could help in small ways, such as choosing local rye over bourbon from GOP-leaning Kentucky, forgoing orange juice from Florida, another Trump-supporting state, or vacationing domestically. British Columbia Premier David Eby said he had ordered the province's liquor stores to remove brands produced in America's red states from their shelves. Ontario Premier Doug Ford also said he would ban American liquor and wine, and announced that his province had banned American companies from provincial contracts. He also said the province would cut its contract with Starlink, owned by SpaceX, whose founder, Elon Musk, is in Trump's inner circle. Sands, however, took the move a little too lightly. He said it would be a simple move to remove American alcohol products because Canadian provinces distribute liquor. He also hears from many of the 6,900 independent grocers represented by the Canadian Federation of Independent Grocers that consumers want to know what Canada is among a strong movement not to buy or support American products. And which of the European countries do you think are most dependent on the United States? In this context, let's take a look at the European countries that export the most to the United States. Besides Germany, Ireland and Italy, a potential 10% tariff on all European Union goods exported to the United States would also significantly affect other European Union countries where the United States represents a significant share of total exports. It is useful to analyse the potential impact of Trump's proposed tariffs by highlighting the value of goods exported by European Union countries to the United States. In 2023, Germany led by a large margin, exporting €157.7 billion worth of goods to the United States. Italy and Ireland followed with exports worth €67.3 billion and €51.6 billion respectively. Together, these three countries account for 55% of European Union exports to the United States. If Trump's tariffs come in, these countries could be hit hard. Let's take a look at the Canadian side. Canada is facing what some economists are calling the biggest trade shock in nearly 100 years. Trump has postponed his tariffs on Canada, but Canadian anger is not letting up. In particular, there are politicians who say, we need to rethink our economic ties with the United States. The big question is, could America lose its closest ally?
We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada? And I said that to, as I called him, Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you, if we didn't, because we give them a lot of money. We help them. As an example, we're buying icebreakers.
United States President Donald Trump has threatened to impose tariffs of 25% on Canadian imports and 10% on Canadian energy. He said the United States tariffs and retaliatory measures announced by the Trudeau government would be delayed for at least 30 days as the countries work together on border security. Yet, for many across the country, the potential for a trade war between long-time allies continues to generate feelings of anger, as well as anxiety and confusion about what will happen. Trump's tariff threat has also raised questions about the nature of the cross-border relationship, spurring calls for Canada to increase domestic trade and look beyond the United States for more reliable international partners. But what were Canada-United States ties like before the tariff spat? The United States and Canada have enjoyed close political and trade ties for decades. Last year, the United States exported more than $322 million worth of goods to Canada, according to United States Census data. It also imported more than $377 million worth of goods from its northern neighbour. About 3/4 of Canada's total trade exports go to the United States. The country is also the largest foreign energy supplier to the United States, and about 97% of Canadian crude oil exports will go south of the border in 2023. But Trump, who has routinely criticised Canada since his re-election in November, said the tariffs were necessary to force the Canadian government to stop irregular migration across the United States border. He also argued that the tariffs were trying to make up for a trade deficit with Canada that he called a subsidy. Mr. Trump said that we pay hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidise Canada. Why? There's no reason. We don't need anything they have. We have unlimited energy. We should build our own cars, and we should have more lumber than we can use. After the United States President's remarks, Canada made it very clear that it was going tit for tat. Prime Minister Trudeau hit back by announcing retaliatory tariffs against nearly $106 billion worth of United States goods. Trudeau said that, "We will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure that our countries continue to be the best neighbours in the world."
We will stand strong for Canada. We will stand strong to ensure our countries continue to be the best neighbours in the world.
But the Canadian Prime Minister announced that the proposed tariffs would be paused for at least 30 days after having a good meeting with Trump. Among other measures, Trudeau said he would launch a Canada-United States joint strike force to fight illegal businesses. But have the two countries had tensions in the past? The answer comes from a professor, Professor Asa McKercher, who studies Canada-United States relations at St. Francis Xavier University, said the two countries have had tensions in the past. He pointed to Canada's refusal to participate in the United States-led invasion of Iraq in 2003, and personal animosities between former United States President John F. Kennedy and Canadian Prime Minister John Diefenbaker in the early 1960s. But McKercher says current trade tensions have reduced the relationship to its lowest point. We have not really seen the Americans doing everything they can to impose a policy that would destroy the Canadian economy. That's the difference here. McKercher also said there has been a surge in nationalist sentiment in Canada since Trump signed the order authorising tariffs against Canada, and Trudeau announced reciprocal measures. Canadian crowds booed the United States national anthem at hockey and basketball games over the weekend, while leaders in some provinces urged people to buy Canadian in response to the tariffs. While Canada appeared to have secured a reprieve from the United States tariffs, many Canadians expressed outrage at Trump's repeated threats against their country. Political, Labour and civil society leaders released the Canada commitment to build a nationwide response to the Trump administration's policies. This includes protecting Canadian sovereignty, reducing the country's dependence on the United States by diversifying our trade, and building alliances with other countries, including through climate action, humanitarian aid, and democracy promotion. At a press conference announcing the campaign, MP Charlie Angus of the New Democratic Party said that it is becoming very clear that building resilience for Canada in this increasingly turbulent world actually means reducing our dependence on our southern neighbour. Unifor's Payne said Trump's tariff threat has created an understanding in Canada that the country needs to review all its economic and trade policies, including procurement processes, infrastructure projects, and natural resource development. All of this is on the table in a way that it has not been on the table for a very long time, Payne said. Meanwhile, Trump agreed to halt tariffs on Canada and Mexico, but not on China. After the deadline passed, a 10% United States tariff on Chinese imports went into effect. Shortly after, Beijing announced retaliatory tariffs on a range of American products, including 15% on coal and liquefied natural gas, and 10% on crude oil and agricultural machinery. Trump earlier said he planned to speak by phone with his Chinese counterparts soon. He called the 10% import tariffs an opening salvo and said they could become very, very significant if no deal is struck. Notably, Trump said that Americans could feel the pain in a trade war with Mexico, Canada, and China. President Donald Trump said in a statement that his sweeping tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China could cause short-term pain for Americans, as global markets reflect concerns that the duties could undermine growth and reignite inflation. Mr. Trump said he would speak to the leaders of Canada and Mexico, which have announced their own retaliatory tariffs, but downplayed expectations that they would change their minds. Mr. Trump also said tariffs would definitely happen with the European Union, but did not say when. Critics say the Republican president's plan to impose 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico and 10% on China would slow global growth and raise prices for Americans. But at this point, China is not shy about Mr. Trump. Chinese leaders have learned a lot from Mr. Trump's first term. His penchant for economic protectionism will lead to more disputes and increased tensions, but Beijing believes it can manage such conflicts. Moreover, Trump's dubious commitment to United States allies will encourage other countries to hedge their bets, forging ties with Beijing to compensate for Washington's unpredictability. Military conflict with the United States is also unlikely. Since Trump's foreign policy has never shown deep ideological commitments, the rivalry between the two countries is unlikely to reach the more destructive dimensions of the Cold War. Trump does not want to get involved in wars, preferring instead to focus on domestic reforms. Since Trump took office 8 years ago, Beijing has become more adept at managing its rivalry with Washington. This rivalry began in earnest when United States President Barack Obama embarked on his pivot to Asia in 2010. In the following years, Beijing has guided the different strategies of the Obama, Trump, and Biden administrations. While Obama and Biden tried to contain China through multilateral approaches, Trump pursued a more unilateral path. The Biden administration extended tariffs on Chinese products during Trump's first term, but focused mainly on excluding China from technological supply chains. It did not seek to comprehensively decouple the United States economy from China. During Biden's tenure, trade between China and the United States in other sectors continued, even as cutting-edge technology cooperation ground to a halt. But Trump is likely to push harder for broader decoupling in his second term and seek to drastically reduce the market share of Chinese products in the United States, including goods assembled outside China but heavily dependent on Chinese investment and components. Beijing is likely to retaliate. The dynamic of mutual retaliation could take the growing trade war between the two powers to a new peak and have detrimental consequences for the global economy, with many countries seeking to adopt their own protectionist policies. As Trump leads an escalation in the trade war, his administration is likely to increase military pressure on Beijing. Trump's second term could create increased tensions between China and the United States as he seeks to constrain Beijing using economic and military pressure. In practice, however, Trump's presidency could benefit China in several ways. First, Trump's relative disinterest in ideological issues could soften some of the edges of the rivalry with Beijing. For example, with his eyes firmly fixed on the bottom line, Trump has shown no interest in defending human rights. He has no interest in shaping China's political system to match its Western counterparts, and is therefore unlikely to be willing to intervene in China's internal affairs. With the Chinese Communist Party focused on maintaining domestic political stability, Beijing has no plans to spread its ideology internationally. Economic and strategic confrontations between Beijing and Washington may increase during Trump's second term, but they are unlikely to escalate into ideological clashes that would put the two states on a direct collision course. While Trump's isolationism certainly creates opportunities for Beijing to improve relations with United States allies, domestic reforms will really determine the course of the rivalry between the two powers. Right now, both China's leaders and Trump's team are more preoccupied with domestic issues than foreign ones. If China's leaders implement better reforms than Trump over the next 4 years, China will narrow the power gap with the United States. But if Trump does a better job than China, and avoids harmful external conflicts and entanglements, the power gap between the two countries will widen. This issue is likely to be a lot more complicated. Stay tuned for further developments. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like us.